I had an idea for a cold open, but I can't fucking remember it.
Well, it probably sucked.
God damn it. Yeah, probably. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles Long. With me, as always, my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob?
I am swell, Charles. Excited to be back. It's been a little bit of a break for us, but we're back.
It's good.
Alive.
It has. But we're both alive and we're both happy and healthy. Well,
I don't know about healthy.
I mean, as healthy as people.
I don't know about happy either.
Yeah, I mean, I'm relatively happy. You're probably relatively healthy. You can probably do a push-up.
I assume you
probably know
could
how.
as well. You probably know how. You know the motions.
Nah,
you can push through
actually,
it.
I'm sorry, dude. This is actually a little bit of a serious topic, but both of my arms got chopped off within the last week and a half.
Oh yeah,
since
I
we
forgot
recorded,
I did that.
so
yeah.
I can't do any push-ups.
My bad.
Yeah,
I think we could reattach them. By the way,
recording with my nose.
I think it would work.
No, I don't want them reattached though. I want to attach nunchucks to both of my shoulders and whack people with them. I think that.
What if we attached your right arm to your left arm and your left arm to your right arm? You know what I mean?
Oh my god, then I would be left-handed. That would be great.
Left-handed.
Would I? Yeah. I'd be left-handed now, and that'd be. I think
okay,
that'd
so
be
would your
pretty
hand
fun.
be backwards?
I've never lived
you know what I mean?
life.
Or would it be upside down?
I think the question more is which would I prefer? Would I prefer my hand be backwards or upside down? See, the thing is,
It'd be very hard to hold stuff with your hands constantly facing outward. You know what I mean? You'd have to like hold your drink backwards and everything.
Yeah.
If your hand was upside down at all times, but still facing, like the palm is still facing you, I think you could figure it out. It'd be weird holding stuff, you know? Like I'm trying to hold my mug right now upside down.
It would take a bit of getting used to.
It's weird having my phone at the bottom of it.
It would take some getting used to, but I do think having your hands upside down would be more doable, more reasonable than having them backwards.
You'd probably be a really good pitcher.
That's besides the point.
I think that would really fuck up people in baseball.
Oh, I'd be
Mr. Backwards hands.
Oh, that would definitely
You'd probably throw
fuck
some
people
really
up in
weird
baseball.
balls that would mess with people.
I think I would try and like make money off of it somehow. I'm not sure what I would do, what scheme or grift I would put into place, but I think I would. I'd have to make some money off of it to really make it worth it, or get free drinks, either or. But I have a pitch this week. You gave me a title last 2 weeks ago, and I have written a pitch called The Comeback Kid. That's the name of the pitch that I was given.
I got that.
And so
what you said.
No, I just for the people in the back.
They can't hear.
And I heard that, and my first thought was sports. Right? It was like a sports movie, like a baseball or basketball movie or something like that. Yeah, because I was like, yeah, well, you know, the comeback kid, right? Like, I could see that people chanting it, and like there's jerseys, you know, they get made and it says the comeback kid because he was, you know, a great baseball player in Little League, and then he got both of his arms cut off and thrown on the wrong side, and he has to
now he's really good at throwing curveballs.
Baseball now.
That curve the other way.
Yeah, exactly. But I heard the kid, right? Comeback kid. And I was like, kid, Sundance kid. I kind of want to do a cowboy thing.
That's what I was thinking.
I kind of want to do a cowboy story, but I also didn't. I didn't really want to write anything about, like, it's a small western town and they're being, you know, taken over by blah, blah, blah. Like, I didn't want to do that. So I decided to do a cowboy story set in World War I.
Not what I was expecting. I was really expecting space cowboys.
That's my... Yeah, well, I live to disappoint.
Okay.
So
it's not disappointing, you know, it's just not what I...
The premise is 3 former outlaws must fight their way through the European hellscape of World War I while being pursued by a spectral gunslinger.
Oh, so it's
right,
not just... Oh, I see.
Idea.
Okay. Spectral gunslinger. All right.
Yeah. Spectral gunslinger. So I am going to just tell you how the movie starts.
Oh, it's
this
a movie.
is a movie, by the way, not a TV show.
It's been a while since we've done a movie. Charlie, can you tell me the last movie we did? This is your little instance of VRP trivia.
I'm not gonna look it up. What is it?
What do you think? I need a guess.
The Operatic Soul Destroyer. That was a movie.
Oh, yeah, damn. Okay, I forgot that you made that a movie. I was gonna say something else, but yes, that's true. Operatic Soul Destroyer. You should know. Yeah.
You're gonna say your one about people being trapped in their minds.
My Big Fat Murderous Macedonian Wedding was the movie I was going for.
Yes. Oh, I remember that. I remember that because we cast ourselves as the two dumbasses. Like the two dullards. But this is a film, and I tried to write it as a TV show, but I just, couldn't really justify it being episodic because it's just, a story, you know? So I guess you could make it in a mini-series, but I'm like, you could fit this in 90 minutes. You don't really need to have it be 6 hours long, you know? You could have it be 6 hours, but unnecessary. An explosion erupts as the dust settles, and we see 4 masked outlaws stealing piles of cash and gold from a train car. As the sheriffs, marshals, and deputies flood into the train, the men begin firing. A massive gunfight breaks out until one of the men throws a stick of dynamite at the wall, blowing a hole in the side of the train car. The 4 men escape on horseback and ride into the night. They are then seen drinking heavily in the next town over, right? And when I say that all 4 men are seen, you only see the face of one of these men. The other 3 men are kind of shrouded in darkness, or you only see their backs or whatever, right? Just keep in mind. They're getting shit-faced tanked in the next town over. They're very happy because they just successfully pulled off an awesome train heist, you know?
Are they bragging about it in the bar, too?
And they all... They're bragging about it in the bar, but this is like a kind of a seedy bar, so no one cares, right? But you see all 4 men, you know, they pick up their glasses of whiskey, right? And they cheers them together, and you see the face of this one dude as he throws back the shot. Cut to, he wakes up bleary-eyed and hungover in a shack in the middle of butt-fuck nowhere, right? With about 24 cops, marshals, sheriffs, deputies, all these guys, all standing outside of the shack with shotguns and revolvers and maybe a Gatling gun, if you really want to be cool, pointed at him, and they're all screaming at him, right? They're all yelling at him. They're talking about how he robbed a train and murdered his 3 accomplices, right? And he tried to escape the law, but the long arm of the law knows no bounds, and it's gonna find you one day or another. And the guy, bleary-eyed and hungover, kind of gets up off the ground, and he's like, kind of, oh, geez, they've caught me. Whatever. And he starts to walk out the door when he realizes he has 2 revolvers shackled to his wrists. You know? Old school shackles, real gross, dirty metal, right? And he tries to open the door and put his hands up to let the cops know that he's fine, he's not gonna hurt anyone, but as soon as the police officers see the 2 handguns in his hands, believe it or not, they just blast him. Absolutely tear him to bits, you know? The Gatling gun turns him into fucking mulch, bro. You know? And then we see a man go over and inspect the corpse of this would-be outlaw, you know, and he sees that he's just a kid, you know, can't be older than 19, 20 maybe, right? Cut to a woman weeping, you know, at the foot of a grave, right? Her head in her hands, right? And she's just so sad. She can't get over this. She is just distraught. And then we see 3 men on horseback, right, on a ridge overlooking the grave, right? And they look over at her. 2 men ride away, and the 3rd man looks over, takes one last look at her. She looks at him, and then he rides off. The comeback kid, right? That's the opening sequence. You want to start with a little bit of an action sequence, a little bit of fun, right? Now, I'm going to introduce you to our three characters before we continue the story, right? Michael Harrigan is an investment banker in New York City who has spent the last 19 years building an affluent but lonely life for himself. He is awkward, quiet, bookish, and meek, but he's constantly scheming to make more and more money.
Just
right?
like you.
Michael Harrigan. Gregory Clay is a small-town doctor who has worked for nearly 20 years, making himself into a cornerstone of the Dust Lake community. He is a friendly, affable man with a deep-seated guilt that affects all of his relationships. Right? And our last man is Eric Maddox, a small-time hustler, conman, and thief who has lived in Chicago for the last 19 years. He is a grifter with a heart of bronze, but a dark, nearly pathological desire for violence that tends to ruin jobs, lives, and relationships. Right? Those are our three men. Obviously, in the movie, there's going to be a bit more show don't tell, but that's our three main characters, right? If you can't tell, those are the three guys who rode away.
Okay, gotcha.
On horseback, they rode away. It's been 19 years since.
Is this GTA 5?
Did this.
The heist went wrong. Guy dies. Now they're all living different lives. Years later, and they're gonna get back together for one more heist.
Almost. I mean, the heist didn't really even go wrong. It just went wrong for the guy who died. But they've spent the last 19 years kind of getting away from that. And I don't have the years written down here, but I did work it out so that when the heist happens in like 1889, right, 19 years past, that's when Americans were being enlisted to fight in World War I. And they were still doing, they were still enlisting people in their 40s, because all three of these men are in their 40s, because they were like in their 20s when the heist went down, Late 30s, early 40s. 19 years passed. Michael Hannigan is living by himself in New York City when he gets a letter in the mail telling him that he's been drafted in World War I. Eric Maddox is living in a slum, scraping day by day when he receives a letter in the mail telling him that he's been drafted. Right? And Gregory Clay is a small western town when he walks into the local post office and enlists to fight in World War I. Right? That's kind of giving you a little bit of a tell that maybe these three men aren't all exactly the same, right? But we kind of they're all, drafted or enlist or whatever, and they're very somber about it, but they know that this is a war and it's important and people are dying, and why should they, live when other people don't? Maddox doesn't think like that, but Clay and Harrigan both think like that. And so they all, go up and they do basic training, and they find themselves in the, the European theater of World War I, right? And that's when they reunite. And they're like, holy shit, I haven't seen you in, 20 years? Something like that? They reunite on the battlefield in the trenches of the war, right? And they're at first kind of in disbelief, but then eventually that malaise of familiarity overcomes them, and they just kind of like, oh yeah, let's, when the battle's over and the fighting stopped, right, they're sitting in the little, the dining rooms that they had in the trenches, and they're drinking this, gut rot shit whiskey, and they're just talking about the life that they've made for themselves, right? And all three men have this sort of knowledge, right, almost like survivor's guilt, almost, where they're like, we know that we did something fucked up, but we haven't done something like that in 20 years, and, we've kind of moved on a bit. Well, Maddox hasn't, but both Clay and Harrigan have, right? And so they're chatting and they're talking, and we kind of see sort of a mirror to the like drinking that they did at the beginning of the film, right? And then they hear tell of a strange, ghostly figure wandering the trenches of World War I, right? This outlaw, gunslinger, cowboy ghost who's wandering the trenches, and he only says 3 things: Harrigan, Maddox, Clay. Over and over and over again, right? Just repeating to himself. And at first, the 3 men, they're like, oh, these young bucks, right? You know, some 18-year-old kid told me that. He's probably just seeing things, or he saw some guy with a cowboy hat on and said all this shit. But as soon as they hear their names, they're kind of a little bit more worried, a little bit more taken aback, right? And then they talk about the shackles. This ghostly, spectral cowboy has these shackles around his wrists that have an eerie clinking that you can always hear coming throughout the battlefield, right? And that's when the 3 men get, like, anxious. They're fucking nervous. Because this is, 1914? Fucking ghosts and shit is still very much real. There is no way that these 3 men are going to outright say, hey, now, ghosts aren't real. In their minds, it is very much real, perfectly reasonable that a ghost would come, right, to get them. Sorry, just taking a cup of joe, a sip of my Café du Mont mug with my Costco coffee.
Are we sponsored by Costco?
Scottish milk. I wish. Oh my God. If we were sponsored by Costco, I would let them do anything they wanted to this show.
I'd take a hot dog.
Just anything. Oh, those hot dogs are good. But back to the fucking movie. Jesus. They're so good, though. Right, so these 3 men, they know about this ghost, right? And they're like, surely it's not. No. Right? And they kind of don't believe it, but they also kind of do believe it, and they're sort of just saying they don't believe it because that makes them feel better, right? And that's when we get into this battle, right? Of Germans attacking the trenches, and I want some real fucking down in the dirt goddamn trench warfare, you know? Some real dark shit that they did in World War I, right? Germans wearing gas masks with those, like, shovel axes. You know those shovel axes?
Yep.
Right?
Well, I think shovel axe is a very interesting way to put it. But
turrets. It was a shovel axe. I feel like that's a pretty good way of putting it. But these Germans are showing up, they're pouring over the trenches, there's this, like, horrible, like, just bloody fighting going on in the trenches. You know, Thomas Shelby's in there, and he's, you know, digging out a little hole, and he's being real sad about it, he's being a real bummer all the fucking time. Right, and as these, you know, 3 men, they're sticking together, and they work together for years as outlaws, so they're very much on the same page when it comes to fighting and combat and that sort of thing. And you can see Maddox has a little bit of it in his eye. He's kind of got that bloodlust a little bit. But they're fighting and they're, you know, staying together and they're staying alive when suddenly they hear the clinking of the shackles, right? And they look up and they see walking across the no man's land as it almost gliding across the carnage, right? Is this spectral ghost, this cowboy, the man that they wronged, right? And all 3 men freeze, their faces go white, their eyes widen, and as soon as the cowboy sees them, right, he starts walking towards them, right? And that's when the 3 men kind of fucking get their shit together, right? They load up their old shitty World War I guns, they start firing, the cowboy dodges and weaves, kind of less like a ghost than you would expect. But he's still very much, you know, keeping it going. He's coming towards them, and these men just start running. So we have this awesome, I would love it if we had like a sort of single shot of these 3 dudes just like running through the trenches of World War I, right? Killing Germans, shooting guys, you know, all while they're being pursued by this spectral cowboy, and you can, you know, every once in a while he'll duck into a shot, right? And I do want the cowboy to have some cool action sequences, so he's killing Germans, right, left and right, but it's all for the same purpose, which is to get to these men, right? And so he's shooting Germans. These guys are shooting Germans. The axe shovels are coming out. They're stabbing people, right? That sort of thing. Bayonets and dirks and all sorts of cool World War I weaponry and all that shit, right? And as soon as the cowboy, comes upon these men, right, he stares at them. Harrington, Maddox, Clay. Like, that's all it says. As soon as it, sort of encounters these men, that's when a mortar hits the trench, right? And the two are separated, right? The three men and the ghost are separated, right? By this mortar explosion, and the men kind of just take it as oh, that's divine intervention. We were saved, right? And as the, sun, crests over the battlefield, right? They look and they can't see any sign of the cowboy, right? He may have not even been real, except for that one of the Germans was killed with a very specific bullet that you can only get, for a cowboy gun. So I was thinking a peacemaker. I was thinking him having two guns, because he's got two cowboy guns, but they're different, like a Navy revolver and a peacemaker. And a Navy revolver is loaded with very specific, ball-like ammunition. So that's how they know he's real and not just sort of part of the miasma of battle, And I haven't really figured out, because I don't know diddly shit about World War I haven't figured out how they're gonna get to the French city that has been bombed out, right? But these men have been transferred, the trench warfare happened, and now they're being transferred to,
back to a hospital that's in this destroyed city.
Yeah, there, easy.
Or they fake an injury so they can get off
Harrington,
the front.
that's good. That sounds like a Harrington thing to do, and he, he'll come into it. He's an important character for this sequence. Sorry. Yeah, Harrington will get injured, right, in some way. Nothing crazy. Maybe he loses a finger or something. I don't want him to be so, out of the fight that he's useless, but I do want him to kind of be on the back foot a little bit. And so Harrington's been injured, and they move back to this French city that, as soon as they arrive, it gets bombed to shit, and it is occupied by the Germans, right? So now these three men are, hiding throughout the German, behind enemy lines effectively in these bombed out, towns, in these bombed out buildings, right? Just sort of seeing little slivers of these French peasants' lives, but they're also trying to keep their heads down and trying to stay alive. Very much reminiscent of that scene in Saving Private Ryan, right? Where Tom Hanks is sad and he's sitting and it's cold and he's getting shot at.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's all of Saving Private Ryan. My bad.
I got you. Yeah, but, when he has the pistol.
Yeah. Yeah. But they're hiding in this little apartment that hasn't been fully bombed out yet, and they're just looking out and they see, this huge German line, right, of soldiers, tons and tons of soldiers, right? And on the other side, walking down the street, walking down this main road, is the spectral cowboy and the clinks of his shackles, right? And they're like, oh shit, maybe the Germans will stop it. Maybe this is it. Maybe we don't need to worry about him anymore, you guys, right? And as the cowboy arrives, the Germans start screaming something in German, believe it or not, and he just fires. He just starts killing guys. He's got 12 shots, so he gets 12 German headshots, right? And then he ducks into one of the buildings, right? And almost like an animal, like a dog, he's able to... He doesn't actually smell the air, but he is able to locate these three men. And so he's chasing them through these bombed out buildings as they're all being fired upon by Germans, right? Until eventually Maddox and Clay are able to, hide in some sort of a bunker, like a basement or an icebox or whatever. But Harrington's left behind. Probably because of his injury, he wasn't able to make it there in time. And Maddox slams the door, and Harrington gets separated. And then the spectral cowboy shows up in this room, and I want it to have like kind of maybe a nursery, right? Like a little kid's room.
Yeah.
And Harrington's there, and he takes off his glasses, and he gets ready for a fight. And the ghost cowboy holsters both of his guns, and they just get right into it. Knives and punching and biting and hair pulling and teeth like kicking, like all a brutal fucking knockout, drag out fist fight, right? I want it to really hurt the audience to watch it, to be like, ooh, that looked like it hurt. Ooh, that sort of thing. And Harrington will get a very good shot off into the ghost's nose, and you'll see a little bit of blood going down his face, right? Just keep that in mind. But eventually, the ghost will, overcome him and be stronger, and eventually he's got him to the ground, and he takes a piece of shattered glass and he pushes it through Harrington's throat, and as Harrington, just gargles all this fucking blood out of his mouth, and he's like, right? The ghost will lean down and whisper in his ear, Elijah Winthrop, right? Stand back, the ghost will stand up, realize that he's lost Maddox and Clay, and then leave. And he'll effectively just disappear, like Batman. And so, after the Germans have left, they were like, oh, we must have killed those Americans, and they got covered in rubble, or there's something, we need to go, right? As soon as Maddox and Clay know it's safe, right? They get out of the basement, and they go, and they find Harrington, right? And they see him, and they are like, oh shit, this ghost is gonna fucking kill us. Because that wasn't a German soldier thing. There's no way a German soldier did that. That was a ghost. That is fucking hate and a revenge, And so they burn his body, and they go to the nearest, like, they are able to find an American platoon and join up with them, right? And this is, I think, more in this section of the movie is when we're going to get more about Clay's character, because obviously we know that he's like a doctor and he's kind of a good guy, right? Of the three men, he's the best, right? And he's going to talk about karma. Like, I want that to be kind of a motif of his, that he talks about karma, and he's got like a very philosophical way of thinking about his own crimes that he's committed against his fellow man, right? Whereas Maddox is very much like, you just, you keep fucking people over until you can't fuck anyone else over, right? Like, I'm a con man, I'm a swindler, I like money and women and drink, right? Like, I'm all about getting one over on people, whereas Clay in the last 20 years has become much more philosophical and introspective. And so that's where these two men are really going to differ. But they join up with this platoon, and they make it down to North Africa, right? I was thinking maybe Egypt, like maybe Cairo with the pyramids in the background, but I'm also kind of like, not everything in North Africa is Egypt. There's other parts of North Africa. I just want to have there be like a dusty, sandy desert kind of environment for this final climactic showdown, right?
Okay.
Because I think that's good for mirroring the like Old West sort of vibe, right? So you get the desert from somewhere else. But these, it's been a few weeks, right? And they're, with the platoon, and they're just keeping an eye out on this outpost, and they're, taking turns doing watch, right? And they're talking, and this is when we get into the kind of karmatic conversation, and they're drinking, and they're, sort of hanging out. They've calmed down a little bit after the death of Harrington, because that really shook both of them. When suddenly the Germans attack.
Okay.
I don't know why that's so funny to me. The Germans
in the desert.
In
World War I.
Yeah. Isn't that where the Germans... Who was in the desert in World War I?
The Ottoman Empire.
Okay, the Ottomans attack.
I don't think there was any Germans.
I just told you, I don't know anything.
I was letting a lot of the historical inaccuracies.
Okay, that's fair. All right.
Fly by, but let's at least make it the Ottomans, just so it's more realistic.
That's fine. I told you, I don't know anything about World War I. Also, there's a ghost cowboy, so, But Ottoman Empire, right? They're attacking. They've attacked this outpost, and so your boy Gregory, Clay, and Maddox have to, fight off these Ottoman Empire guys, right? And there's this big bombastic fight scene, and I want there to kind of be color-wise, I want it to be a little bit different than the other ones, because the other two action sequences, right, took place in the trenches, and it bombed out French village. So it's very, those are very muted colors, and it'll be very muted. But I want the, fire mixed with the desert and the night, right, to be really bright and very vibrant looking, And so Maddox and Clay, they're fighting off these Germans, right, and they're doing all this thing, or not these Germans, these Ottoman Empire guys, right, Ottomans, as you say. I love to put my feet up on an Ottoman. They're doing all this stuff when suddenly they see, cresting over a sand dune, there's the spectral cowboy again, right? And he is killing Ottoman Empire guys, he's killing Americans, he's killing all sorts of people in World War I. All the British, all the whoever else is in World War I. British, Americans, French, Germans, Dutch people probably. We're the Dutch? We're the Dutch in World War I? No? Not even one?
I'm sure there's some Dutch people. So we're in the desert, right? If you want to make this realistic, you can have it as, I don't know, the Ottomans versus some British soldiers and the Bedouin tribes, so like Lawrence of Arabia, that kind of thing.
All right, cool. That's fine. They joined up with a British platoon. It's fine. The historical, I kind of just leaned into the historical inaccuracies at a certain point because who cares? And I knew you would fix them because you know more about history than I do. And you care, which is nice. But, yeah. All this fighting's going on. Very big, bombastic, huge fight sequence. I kind of want it to be similar in tone to the ending of Dune Part 2. If you've seen that.
Yep. Solid movie.
That was for the audience. I know you've seen it. I know you're a big fucking nerd. You've seen Dune 2.
Shit.
I know.
I haven't seen it.
It's for the audience.
What's Dune? Is that a...
Yeah.
Is that a movie about like beach dunes?
Is that
people surfing?
Yeah. Is that like a cool beach party movie with Jason Momoa?
Yeah, this is the only movie
He's doing surfing tricks? Yeah, cool guy movies with Jason Momoa, like Aquaman and Aquaman 2, the bigger Aquaman. But we're having this big fight, right? The spectral cowboy shows up. There is this massive battle that commences, right? All while Maddox and Clay are attempting to avoid the cowboy and keep alive and, defend the outpost and all this stuff, right? And the battle lasts all night, and they're able to stay out of the cowboys', reach for pretty much the entire night. But as the sun rises and the dawn is beginning, right? The three men are standing there, right? And they're in a Mexican standoff. They've finally been cornered, and there's nothing they can do. They have to deal with the crime that they committed, So Maddox has his gun on the cowboy, Clay has his gun on the cowboy, and the cowboy has both his guns on both these men, right? When all of a sudden Maddox turns around real quick and shoots Clay in the leg, and he talks to the ghost. He says, "Please, take him. He can just let me go, please, Elijah. We were always friends." Shit scared, terrified. He's just betrayed the only person in the world who would consider him a friend, right, to save his own skin, right? And so the ghost kind of starts walking towards him, and Maddox turns around and he runs, right? He runs as fast as he can, as Clay lies on the ground. He's bleeding pretty profusely from the leg. And Clay looks up at the ghost and he says, "I'm sorry, that I did what I did. I can't take it back, but I do want you to know that I'm sorry. You know, and Clay kind of leans back and he accepts his death, right? And the cowboy raises his gun at him and then shoots Maddox in the back as he's running away. And Clay, we hear it goes dark, we hear the shot, right? Clay opens his eyes, he turns around, Maddox has fallen to the ground. The cowboy looks at him, he tips his hat to him, and he walks away, right? That's the end of the World War I stuff, right? Okay. Next, we cut to... There's still a little bit of movie happening. Cut to, it's a few months later, right? Clay has been sent home for whatever reason. We'll say he got hurt. You know, he's got a broken leg. Yeah, war's over. Doesn't matter. Any reason whatsoever. No, actually, in this universe, World War I never ended because and it's all Germans all day long. 24/7 Germans. But Clay's home and he's arrived back at Dry Lake and he's happy and he's a little melancholy that his two friends are both dead and one of them was a betrayer, but he's happy to be alive, right? And he rides out to the town that he was in when the murder happened, when Elijah was gunned down by all the police, right? He goes and he pays his respects to Elijah's grave. He leaves a flower, right? And then he goes and he sees the woman who was weeping at Elijah's grave, right? And she looks up at him and their eyes meet, and he comes up to her and he shakes her hand. He says, "Hi, ma'am, I knew Elijah many years ago. I just wanted to pay my respects and give you my condolences." And she invites him in to have a meal because he's traveled all this way, and I would feel bad if I just sent you away without anything, And he at first is a little reluctant, but he eventually concedes and he goes inside, right? And he sits down at the dinner table, and there's two men here. The first man, Clay looks at him and they make eye contact. And we see a flash to the opening sequence of the movie, and we see that the man that he's looking up at is the sheriff who saw the dead body, who investigated the dead body of Elijah, right? Apparently he and the woman got together, right? And then he looks at the other man, right? He's a young boy, couldn't be older than 19 years old, right? He looks at him and he's got the same face as Elijah, almost. There's ever so slightly a few differences. He looks at him and he notices he has a small cut on his nose and his wrists are all scarred up as if he's been wearing shackles or something. And then we cut back to the opening sequence of the movie and we see that the woman, as she's weeping at Elijah's grave, we see that she's 9 months pregnant. Oh. And then Clay looks at both of these men. He nods at them both. He eats his meal. Then he goes outside. He takes a bag off of his horse. He drops it on the porch and he says, "Elijah would have want you to have this. Right? And as he gets on his horse and he rides away, the younger man comes out. The 19-year-old man comes out and he looks at him. They both look at each other, and Clay tips his hat to him. And as the young man opens the duffel bag, right, he sees all of the money that Clay got in the heist from the opening movie. He didn't spend a dime of it. Opening of the movie. And Clay rides off into the sunset. I think, do you have any questions about the film? Because I understand that the ending was open to interpretation. I think.
I don't want to know. I don't know. Is the ghost that guy?
No, you don't want to know? Matter. All right, fair.
The question is
Was the ghost that guy? Was it his kid?
Yeah.
Was it a real ghost? We don't know. Yeah, but that's the movie, The Comeback Kid. I think it's pretty fun.
I enjoyed it. Despite the historical inaccuracies, I thought it was pretty fun. Mm-hmm. I like ghost pursuing them throughout the war. It's very, like, it's interesting. It's like they've got this, threat constantly chasing them as they're already in an extremely dangerous environment.
Exactly.
And then the mystery.
Yeah.
Who's the ghost?
It was fun to write.
Ghost. Yes.
The mystery. Is it a real ghost? Whoa. What's happening? Yeah, I thought it was a good show, and I'm casting. Who am I casting? I'm casting myself as a German soldier who gets killed in a hilarious fashion.
I want to be a British soldier that gets eviscerated by an artillery shell.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be fun. For you to be eviscerated by an artillery shell.
And do a really poor
but thank you everyone for listening to the yeah.
3 seconds.
It will be terrible. It will cut. Oh yeah, like a second before you get hit by this shell, we, splice in footage of a mannequin being hit with the shell with a wig on. And they're like, yeah, it's close enough. But yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me, has always been my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat. And remember, we will be here next week with a brand new televisual series for you to imagine and enjoy. The series name being The Burner.
The Burner.
The Burner. The Burner.
Things be on fire?
Yeah.
Yes,
so
they
thank
will.
You all. Oh, who knows? Oh,
yeah,
they're gonna. Oh, fun. Have a good night, everyone.